In the previous video, we talked about how to create and import your avatar into Unity. And now let's take it a step further and also optimize your avatar in Unity so you can, just get the best performance out of your game as well. This video is sponsored by Ready Player Me. Ready Player Me is a cross-game avatar platform for any digital experience. Their avatars are used in over 7,000 applications already, including VR Chat, Medium VR, Live, and many others. And their mission is to have more open and connected digital experiences where you can create your avatar once and use it across all of these applications. Let's get started and first of all talk about the different parameters that you have for configuring the avatar. So we talk about 4 of these. Number 1, level of details or LODs. So Ready Player Me gives you the opportunity to create 3 different LOD types of your avatar: high, medium, low, which means that high has the full poly count and the texture amount, that's the highest quality, but it takes the most of the performance. Then medium is reducing the poly count by 25% and then low by further 25%. And that means that if you have a limited amount of performance, let's say you have like hundreds of avatars in the web, for example, then you want to go with the lower setting. Or if they are further away, for example, you don't see all these details anyways, because the difference is very, very, very small actually, then you also want to go for a lower LOD as well. So for example, if we take a closer look at these buttons, we see that there is a small difference. Of course, like the higher one, the buttons just look a bit rounder, and the lower you go, they kind of look like more like polygons and like more edgy. But again, if you are further away, you don't see the difference too much really. Number 2, this is the texture size of your overall avatar, which you can set between 1024, so 1024, and as the highest, as the maximum, and then 256 as a minimum. So here you see a direct comparison of the 1024 times 1024 and the 256 times 256, and you'll see here as well, the difference is not too big really, but there's still a clear difference in quality, especially around the clothes that you are wearing. Number 3, texture atlasing. So you can save a lot of computational power by enabling texture atlasing. So you can put all of the draw calls and the meshes basically in as one, which means that instead of having 9 draw calls and 8 materials, you only have 1 draw call, 1 mesh, 1 material, because it's all put together in one atlas. And that also saves a ton of performance as well. And number 4, which is the morph target or blend shapes, which is basically like if you have the facial animations, like how much you smile and everything, which can also really blow up the performance. This is also something that you can set inside of Unity, which we will now check out. So here I am back in Unity. If you don't know how to get your avatar into Unity in the first place, then definitely check out this video here. There we explain everything. But now let's check out how we can get our config files. So let's just go back to assets and then let's create a folder, and we just call it config files. The name doesn't really matter, like it doesn't also have to be in a folder really, but I just like to have things clean. And then in here we can go right click and then create Ready Player Me and avatar configuration. And now this is a default configuration. Let's just call this avatar config high, and then we can set all the high settings, and then we can later compare the high, medium, and low one. So here high LOD, but the pose doesn't really matter. Texture atlas, let's just have it as high, and then let's keep it as a maximum. And yeah, that's already fine because we don't need to set all of these things. Now what we can do is we can just let me just have it as a list. I like that one more. And now we can duplicate it by hitting Control and D, setting this one to medium, set the medium sizes over here. So this one medium, and then let's just go 512, and there we go. And now let's go a low one. So we go with low here as well, and then here 256, and also rename it. So now we have our high, medium, and low. Oh, I think perfect. High, low, medium config files, and now I will show you how you can also enable them in your project. So first of all, one thing that I want to do, I want to get a different avatar with the suit basically, so we can see the buttons. Now let me just go and paste it in here, load avatar into current scene. So that will take my different outfit much smoother, I would say. And now if you want to change the LOD, you go avatar ready player me and then settings, and in here you can drag and drop one of these. So let's just take the high one, for example. I think the high one's the default one, so I think that should not change anything really. Yeah, it looks pretty much the same. But now if we go a lot closer, and there we go. And now if I go to low and I drag this one in, we should see some changes. Load, and there we go. Okay, now we see a clear difference. So maybe we went overboard with these settings, but you definitely can see a big difference in the quality, and then of course also performance. Now just for the sake of it, let's also go to medium. There we go, and load it. And here we have the medium one as well. All right, let me go back to high because I like the high fidelity the most. And then let's also see how we can do the same thing during runtime. So while your application is playing, how can you change it? For example, when you click a button or when you want to change something. So that will be happening via scripting. That will take a bit of time to load, but let's already create our script. We go to assets and then C# script. There we go. And then we can just call it a dynamic loading or something like this. And now I will see you in Visual Studio. So here we are in Visual Studio. First of all, let's just get rid of these things, and we need to import the Ready Player Me SDK, Ready Player Me avatar loader. There we go. And now just some initial setup. So before we go into the start, we will need our avatar URL. So serialize field, private string, and then avatar URL. That is fine. And now we need a couple of objects to basically set up everything. So avatar object loader, which is a class that we get from the Ready Player Me API over here. Object loader, there we go. And then we need two config files you can try out. Avatar config, and let's just take high and low to have the comparison. So config high, for example, and then the same avatar config, we call this config low. So these are the variables that we will need for the start, and now we can also do some initialization. So first of all, we want to get the object loader equals new avatar object loader. There we go. And now we want to set up our two avatar configs. So config high equals, and then it says scriptable object dot create instance. So this is the equivalent of what we did previously in the Unity editor. Avatar config. There we go. And now we can do the same thing. So Control C, Control V, and now we do the same for low. There we go. Let's now create two methods, public methods that we will use to have a button click that loads the high config and the low config. So let me just clean up this mess. And then public void load high config. There we go. And we can have the same. Oh, let me actually just write it already. So config high dot, and then we can set all the variables we did in Unity as well. So which means mesh LOD equals, and then mesh LOD dot high, which is the enum we can choose. So we have high, medium, low over here. And then the couple of other things. So the texture size limit, and let me just do this one first. Avatar config high, I mean, dot, and then texture size limit equals 1024. So now we're basically just doing manually the same things we did, or via code doing the same things we did in the Unity editor. And now we want to load the model as well. So avatar config equals avatar config high. So we can already, that was a thing that we did previously in the settings basically, and now we want to actually load it. So object loader dot load avatar, and then we can paste our avatar URL. There we go. So just a manual process of all the things we already did in Unity. But again, you can get really creative and really fancy. You can like have if else things over here. Like you can check the distance. This is just like a super simple example how we can do the same thing via code. But of course, in code, you have a lot more flexibility as well. And now we can do the same for the load low config. And now just the equivalent low and 256. Low, I hope I don't miss any. We want to set these, of course, also correctly. Always these copy paste mistakes. Object loader, and I think the rest is fine. So now low config, config low is low, config low is this one, and then of course you can set up all of the other things as well. But for testing, this is totally fine now. Object loader, yep, and yeah, so that should be working now. So let's hit save and go back to Unity. And here we can close this one. Let me just copy that because I will need it in a second. And now we can create a new object. So let's just call this avatar loader. And in here we can paste our script and paste the URL as well. And now, of course, we want to have something to test. So we can create a little UI with 2 buttons. Oh, there's even like a Ready Play Me UI. Where is the button? Oh yeah, here, Text Mesh Pro. So that's gonna take 2 minutes to install. Now with Text Mesh Pro installed, we can add a couple of buttons. So I think 2 buttons is totally fine. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. So there we go. We can call this one high and increase the size a bit. Button high. We don't have to get too fancy here. So this is button low. And we can call this one low. And now we want to call these 2 functions basically. So where is it? On click. Here we want to paste our avatar loader and then dynamic loading and then load high config. Let me just double check. Button high and then button low gets the low config. There we go. And now let's get rid of our models over here. So we actually see that they are dynamically being loaded and everything. Let's hit play and hope everything works out. Let me just put the game view on this side. So we have the high one. Hopefully that will load the avatar in a second. Yep, there we go. I don't know where it is. Let me just, yeah, there we go. Here we have the higher avatar. Let's just move him to the other side so we can kind of like see. Okay, this looks pretty high fidelity, I would say. And now we can do the same for low. And now we have the low fidelity one. And you can already see, okay, there is some differences. I mean, there are some clearly visible differences in the quality. And also if we click here, we see, we can also like basically check it in the stats as well, but that is something I would leave to you now as a homework, for example. And yeah, that is how you get the dynamic loading for the avatar configuration. So what would be an example where you would really need this case? The biggest example really, or the biggest use case, is multiplayer games where you have a lot of avatars and possibly not a lot of performance, because it could be on any device, it could be on the phone, it could be with a low internet connection, with a bad internet connection. All of these cases would be one example. And there's also a nice example from Ready Play Me itself that we can check out. So let's just go to, where is the package manager? There we go. And then in here, let's just see, we have some samples more, and here we have the avatar loader, avatar LOD, I mean. There we go. Let's open up the LOD scene just to check it. Here they have the same thing as well, like here high, medium, low. And now let's check out the example, hit play. And now we can move the slider, and now we see LOD 1, so that is the high quality one. Oh, that is the high quality one. Reduce texture and even further reduce texture. I mean, like here you don't need to have all these details, right? Because you don't see the little details anyways. And this is, for example, a very nice use case of how and why to use the configuration files, these scriptable objects over here. This is it for the video. If you have any questions, then please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you Ready Player Me for sponsoring this video. It's amazing to work with you guys. It's really cool. It's an amazing product, great collaboration. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, I see you in the next one.